Okay, so this is 4.8 complex numbers in your note packet. Okay, so again, I to the first equals the square root of negative 1. I squared equals negative 1. Guys, what are you doing? For what? Take notes. No, I'm not going to help you. It's a quiz. All right, number 1. Just like when we simplified radicals, when we're simplifying radicals with negative numbers, because in the past we couldn't be able to do it, it was undefined. Well, now we have a new number system called complex numbers using what's called I. And I don't have time, unfortunately, don't have time to get into the theory of, or how this came about. Yeah, because that would take us 2 days. With you guys it would. What? What? No. And so, before, what we did when we simplified radicals was we made perfect squares, right? And we multiplied that by imperfect squares. Okay. This time we've got a third radical that we're going to be, because they're negative, we're just going to put a negative 1 in there. Okay. So when we go to simplify the square root of negative 9, well, we're going to put our 3 radicals there. Okay, what's our perfect factor of 9? Well, actually 9 is a perfect square. So we're just going to put that in there. We have our negative 1, and we actually don't have an imperfect square that's a factor of 9. So we're just going to scratch that one out. Square root of 9 is 3. The square root of negative 1 is I. There's my answer. Watch the video. Okay, number 2.
I missed the step. So how'd you get 3i?
Number 2. Here's my perfect squares. Here's my negative 1 and my imperfect. What's my perfect square that's a factor of 6? There is none. I have my negative 1, and then I have my 6. So I have I is equals square root of negative 1 equals I, square root of 6. There's my answer. I equals the square root of negative 1. It gets hard. Okay, so here's my perfect squares. Here's my negative 1. Here's my imperfect squares. What's a perfect square that's a factor of 8? 4. Here's my negative 1. And 4 times 2. That's my imperfect. It's in the middle. Okay. It's in the middle. Because I didn't have a perfect square that's a factor of 6. It's not hard. Square root of 4 is 2. Square root of negative 1 is I. And there's nothing I can do with the imperfect. So I get that. Okay, number 4. Here's my perfect squares. Here's my negative 1. And there's my imperfect. What's a perfect square that's a factor of 32? That's right, 16. 16 times 2 is 32. What's the square root of 16? 4. Square root of negative 1 is I. And I have left over square root of 2. Basically, the only new concept is that square root of negative 1 is I. Well, no wonder you failed that section. Part 2. And here's another section that you guys kind of blew off when I went over it. Was solving quadratic equations by taking the square root. Many of you blew that off because I only got like 6 homeworks for that. Okay, so I have to solve for x using taking the square root method. Subtract 10 from each side. So I get 3x squared equals negative 36. Then I'm going to divide by the coefficient 3. And I get x squared equals negative 12. Yes. Okay, so we got to take the square root of both sides. Okay, now I get x equals, and I have to do the simplification of the negative 12, right? First of all, it's plus or minus, right? Because we're now getting a solution. We have an equal sign, so we have the plus or minus sign. Perfect square, my negative 1, and my imperfect. What's the largest perfect square that's a factor of 12? 4 times 3. So x equals plus or minus 2i square root of 3. How easy is that? Good. If you're done, put it in the turn-in bin.
Over there.
Yeah. Okay, number 2. I'm going to subtract 26 from both sides. I get 2x squared equals negative 36. Divide by the coefficient 2. This one's going to be pretty easy too. So I get x squared equals negative 18. Take the square root of both sides. So x equals plus or minus the perfect square, the negative 1, and the imperfect. Largest perfect square, that's a factor of 18. 9 times 2. So x equals plus or minus 3i square root of 2. Number 3. Oh my God, it's a fraction. I'm going to skip it. Yeah, multiply both sides. What's the easiest way of getting rid of a fractional coefficient? Divide it or multiply it by its reciprocal. It's the same thing. So I'm going to multiply both sides by negative 2 over 1. Okay, the reciprocal. So these cancel the 1. I get x plus 1 squared. Okay, 5 times negative 2 over 1, negative 10. Going to take the square root of both sides. What's so funny? Are you laughing? That's right, we're doing math. That's right. Plus or minus. Oh, do we have a perfect square for 10? So we just got negative 1 and and square root of 10. Now, we still have to get x by itself, right? So what am I going to do? Subtract 1 from both sides. Now, guys, please be careful here, okay? This is a real number. This is not. Leave them separate and put your real numbers first. So I have negative 1 plus or minus, there's I, radical 10. Okay. So So it's getting, every problem seems like just a little bit tougher. All you have to remember, I equals negative, the square root of negative 1. I squared equals negative 1. That's all you have to remember. There is no what. The square root of 9 is 3.
I'm sensing a lot of hostility.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or 8. No. You won't. You'll. If you take Math 4, you'll get into it, but not this course. Don't worry about it. All right, number 11. Now, again, please remember, I squared equals negative 1. Also, you want your answers in that form of the real number plus or minus the I number, okay? You want to leave your answers in that. Like in number 3, we have our real number plus or minus our I number. All right, number 11, we're going to do some operations now with I. This is a plus sign. I don't have to worry about parentheses, do I? I can just drop them because that's a plus sign. If it was a minus sign, I would have to distribute, correct? Okay, but we don't. I'm just going to drop them. So, I'm going to combine like terms. Here's a 4. Here's a plus 3. Gives me 7. I have a minus 1i. And a plus 2i gives me just I. A plus I. There's my answer. Good. Actually, this is used a lot for in electricity. It's used a lot. Also, computer programming uses a lot of I. If you're going to do anything computer, software, if you're going to use software, then you're just going to go in a hole and bury yourself. Yes, Caleb? I can't hear you because there's way too much talking. Yeah, you're going to combine 7 and negative 1 to get the 6. And then you're going to combine the negative 5i, and this is going to be a positive 5i, right? Negative 5i plus 5i is what?
No.
0. Okay, so you're just going to get 6. Negative 5y, you're distributing the minus sign, so you get a plus 5i. It's 0. Okay?
You distribute first.
Yes. So, number 13, let's distribute. 6 plus 2 minus 9i plus a negative 8 is just minus 8 plus a plus 4i is just plus 4i. Okay. Combine your like terms. 6, 2, minus 8, 0, right? And then we have minus 9i plus 4i, which is minus 5i. You could leave it like this, or you could just put minus 5i. Either way is fine. No. We have multiplication and division, then we're done. Oh my God. Is it going to be fractions involved? You betcha. I feel so bad when I go home that you guys just like can't learn this stuff.
What do you mean? You have emotion.
I go home and actually have to make myself laugh.
Shouldn't you do that normally?
Okay, multiplication. Let's do an easy one where you're just distributing once, right? A monomial times a binomial. 5i times negative 2 gives me what? Negative I. 5i times 1i gives me what? Yeah, plus 5i squared. Now, what's I squared? Negative 1, right? So actually, this is 5 times negative 1, so I have negative 10i minus 5, right? Anybody not see what I did? And then I want to put it in a plus b plus or minus bi, right? So I need to put my real number first, minus 10i. Should we do another one? Two times 11 is 22. 2 times positive 16i is plus 32i. And there's nothing to simplify, so I'm done. Number 16. 3i times 1 is 3i. 3i times minus 5i is minus 15i squared. I squared is negative 1. So I have 3i, negative 1 times negative 15 is positive 15. And then I have to put it in the proper order. 15 plus 3i. Okay, now the fun stuff starts. Number 17. How do I multiply a binomial times a binomial? Skip it. How do I multiply a binomial times a binomial? Yeah, FOIL it, right? Okay, first, 7 times negative 1 is negative 7. Outer, 7 times 2i is positive 14i. Inner, negative 4i times negative 1 is a positive 4i. And last, negative 4i times 2i is negative 8i squared. Okay, FOIL. Now, when we FOIL, we have two terms in the middle to combine. So I have negative 7 plus 14i plus 4i is plus 18i. What's I squared? Good. So negative 8 times negative 1 is positive 8. And now I have two terms to combine. The negative 7 and the 8 gives me positive 1 plus 18i. Easy peasy. Okay, 18. I have 6 plus 3i times 6 minus 3i. Binomial times a binomial. By the way, shh, this is a special case, okay? I have the same thing, it's almost the same thing being multiplied, right? Almost. Except that this is a plus and this is a minus. This is what we call a conjugate. And there's a special thing that happens with conjugates. See these middle terms? They always add up to 0. You don't believe me, you say. I hear that. Why, Mr. D, I don't believe you. Well, let me show you. Okay, 6 times 6 is 36. 6 times negative 3 is negative 18i. Positive 3i times positive 6 is positive 18i. Positive 3i times minus 3i is minus 9i squared. See these middle terms? They cancel out because it's a conjugate. Shh. 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 Okay, not only that, but I have an I squared here, and that's a negative 1. So I have 36 plus 9, which is 45. Look what happens when I multiply conjugates together. I get a real number. That's an important concept. Why, Mr. D? Why is that so important? Because when we get to division, we're going to multiply by the conjugates. Oh, that's really great, Mr. D. Fantastic. All right, 19. This means that I have 3 plus 4i times 3 plus 4i. FOIL it. 3 times 3 is 9. 3 times 4i is 12i. Inner 4i times 3 is plus 12i. And last, I have plus 16i squared. Combine your middle terms. I get 9 plus 24i. And then this is negative 1 times positive 16 is minus 16. Combine your real numbers. 9 minus 16 is minus 7 plus 24i. Last one, division. Why, Mr. D, I know how to do division because you said how to do it. You said multiply it by its conjugate. Correct. You can never have an I in your denominator, so we're going to multiply it by its conjugate. 1 plus 2i. But I can't change the value of the fraction, so I have to multiply the numerator by 1 plus 2i. Okay, the denominator, I'm expecting to get one number, a real number, just like up when we did it here. So, again, the middle terms are going to cancel out, so all I have to do is the first term and the last term. So 1 times 1 is 1. Negative 2i times 2i is negative 4i squared. I squared is negative 1. Negative 1 times negative 4 is positive 4. So my denominator equals 5. Should get that one number. And then all I have to do is FOIL the top. 5 times 5. Outer, 5 times 2i plus 10i. 3i times 1 is 3i. 3i times 2i is 6i squared. I have two middle terms to combine, and I have this I squared equals negative 1. So this equals, let's see, negative 1 times positive 6 is negative 6, plus 5 is negative 1. 10i plus 3i, 13i, all over 5. There's nothing more I can cancel out. There's my answer. Okay, these are the hardest problems that we get to in Algebra 2. $21. I'm going to multiply by its conjugate, 1 minus I. Okay, 1 times 1 is 1. This is going to be a minus I squared. By the way, this is probably going to end up always being plus or minus 1. So you have 1 plus 1, which equals 2. FOIL, 2 times 1 is 2. Outer, 2 times negative I is negative 2I. Inner, negative 7I times 1 is negative 7I. Last, negative 7I times negative I is positive 7I squared. Combine your middle two terms. Substitute in negative 1 for I squared. So I get 2, let's see, minus 7. It's going to be minus 5. Negative 2 minus, negative 2I minus 7I is minus 9I all over 2. Last one, 22. I'm going to multiply by its conjugate. Oh, I can't. So I'll just multiply by 3I. Because what happens is I get 9I squared, which is negative 9. So my denominator, negative 9. Numerator, I'm just going to distribute the 3I. So negative 6I plus 15I squared. The only thing I have to simplify, I squared equals negative 1. So this becomes negative 15 minus 6I all over negative 9. Oh, hey, I can factor out a 3. 3 goes into negative 15 5 times. 3 goes into negative 6 2 times. And 3 goes into negative 9 3 times. There's my answer. You guys look so happy, happy, happy. Happy, happy students. Happy, happy, happy. Okay, you picked up the worksheet on your way in. Do that tonight. Spend, I don't know, it should take you, what, 20 minutes to finish? Questions, comments, concerns?